Now, over the years, experiences have shown that subsidy on premium motor spirits, that's popularly called petrol, is a burden that must be lifted off the shoulder of government. But in doing this, there is need to take into cognizance the welfare of the people and their prevailing circumstances. Earlier this month, the Petroleum Products Marketing Company, a subsidiary of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, announced the increase in price of fuel from 148 naira to 151 naira. That's an ex-depot price due to the deregulation of the downstream sector, which took effect in March this year. Given the magnitude of the alleged corruption that has beclouded the downstream sector, it is crystal clear that no government will want to continue the payment of subsidy on fuel. But in doing this, there is need to put into consideration the prevailing circumstances and economic hardship Nigerians are facing at the moment caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Though the government claimed that the removal is for the benefit of the masses and to ensure economic growth and, of course, development of the country, experts say the government have failed to realize that the adverse effect of the hike in price of fuel will, of course, dovetail to the price of goods and services across the country. Despite calls from different quarters for the cancellation of the hike or reversal on the act of fuel, Prime Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Presilva, recently said the deregulation of the oil sector will make the nation's refineries function optimally and encourage private sector to take over the role of supplying petroleum products. Joining me now via Skype to elaborate more on the contending issues and the benefits, of course, of deregulation, and if there are holes to pick it up and let's address what the issues are. The impact on livelihood of Nigerians is also very important. I have the West African tax leader, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Thank you very much, Mr. Oyedele, for your time.
Thank you for having me, Tolu.
Now, a lot of talk about deregulation at this time. We're grappling with COVID-19. So I want us to start this way. Why do many people think this is actually the right time to take this action, considering all that Nigerians face?
Thank you very much, Tolu. I think maybe I should start by saying I do not think that there's a wrong time to make a right decision. The subsidy scandal, let me call it that way, has been with us for decades. And this has been one of the biggest challenges that we face as a country, and we haven't been able to address it for a long time. It's a big problem because we're spending trillions of naira and it's not getting to the people. So if it was a country where we had abundance of resources, then this would be okay. But not for a country that is borrowing, maybe even borrowing to fund salary payment, let me call it that way, and even more, extensively recurrent expenditure and all of that. In Q1 of this year, the federal government spent 99.2% of its revenue just to service debt. So when people say, let's continue with fuel subsidy, they need to be clear that what they're asking for is they are saying government should go and borrow, pay interest on it, and use it to subsidize petrol, which indeed doesn't get to, poorest people as much as it gets to the middle class and the rich people. We also need to be clear that, in fact, diesel, AGO, as well as household kerosene, which I think is more relevant and consumed by the poorest people than that petrol, have been deregulated for a number of years now. So you see that certain heavy vehicles, including mass transit buses, like Molue in Lagos, they use diesel. This has been deregulated, and those are the poorest people in society who patronize them, as well as kerosene, like I said. So we have, a lot of, committees, investigation. In 2012, just to remind our viewers, the National Assembly Subsidy Probe Committee estimated that there was about $6.8 billion of fraud associated with subsidy of petrol between 2009 and 2011. Between 2006 and 2014, it's estimated that we spent 7 trillion naira. If you bring that up to 2020, it's well over 10 trillion naira that has been spent in that period of time. This effectively is more than the amount we have spent on infrastructure, not the amount budgeted, the actual amount spent. And of course, it's a lot more than we are spending on education and healthcare combined, which are the areas where we should be focusing on. So clearly, this is not sustainable, and we have to do something differently.
Mr. Yedele, 6.8 billion, and that's talk of suspected fraud and all that we've heard about subsidy really is disheartening. But now the effect on the masses is where I'm looking at now. What the federal government will have to really contend with. Many say a lot of money will be saved, just like you've also identified, if this is effective and is already on ground. Now, what do you think? How do we monitor proper usage, proper channeling of all of these funds, if truly, we get all of these trillions of naira moving into infrastructure and all of it?
Yes, I think first and foremost, maybe we should even look at what should be the true impact of the deregulation before we start looking at how can we get government to apply it effectively for the benefit of the people. So the number one area where you notice the impact of the deregulation of petrol price, pump price, is the increase in transport fare. And I'd like to, look at this from two angles. There's what I call the true impact, and there's what I call the manipulated impact. So if you took a bus from Ikeja, you're going to Obalende, and you're paying about 300 naira before the deregulation. Once it's been deregulated, you find Nigerians extorting Nigerians. So what tends to happen is people then look for every excuse to say because of the price of petrol, they can increase that transport fare from 300 to 500. But if you do the analysis, let's say you use a gallon of petrol from Ikeja to Obalende one trip for a bus that can carry up to 14 passengers. If the price goes up from 145 to 160 naira per liter, the additional cost of the trip from Ikeja to Obalende is only 60 naira. Even if you carry 12 passengers and you divide by 12, the increase in fare is 5 naira. So that 5 naira is so small that the transporter should be able to accommodate it. And let's say they cannot accommodate it, you should increase the fare from 300 to 305. Somebody will say, well, they can't find change. But we're just trying to say, on one hand, there are people who take advantage of any slight increase to make super profit for themselves to the detriment of society. And just to also corroborate this, when there was a reduction in the pump price from 145 to even about 123, the fare did not come down, right? So which means the middle class were the one who benefited. So essentially, we have to first do a distinction between the true impact and the manipulated impact. Whatever that may be, we also have to then focus, to your question, on how government is spending the savings that is coming from this, which is what I think should be the focus of the conversation, whether it's NLC or any other organized private sector that is trying to have this engagement with government. It has to be that how do we put structures in place such that the money we save from this, that we no longer waste, can go to the benefit of infrastructure and human capital development in particular. We have to bear in mind that because we have the subsidy in place, it's also the reason why we do not attract investment into that sector. Nobody wants to put their money down when they are not sure of recovering the cost of investment plus some decent profit. And we also know that the NNPC, based on their own report, spent over 86 billion naira maintaining refineries that refine not even a single barrel of oil. So these are wastages that we're dealing with and a lot of inefficiencies that once you're able to address this, you can save that. The reason why the cost of subsidizing petrol is so huge is because a lot of it is not even coming to Nigerians at all, whether they're rich or poor. People are just buying them and taking them across the border, where our neighboring countries, the cost of fuel price per liter is around $1, almost twice what we have in Nigeria.
Very extensive one there. Now, the issue of refining comes again to the fore. Are you a fan of privatization? That's talking about privatizing our refineries. Or do you think we need private sector intervention to help revamp these refineries? Because it comes back to that issue of we don't refine, and the issue of forex would pop up one way or the other.
Yes, indeed. I'm a fan of privatization, and the concept is let people who have the best capacity, who also have the interest of efficiency in mind, who have their enlightened self-interest to protect, which is you have to do well to be able to make profit. So today, if you compare Nigeria LNG, for example, right? So we have significant government stake. But it's driven by the private sector, and it's one of the most efficiently run organizations you can find in Nigeria, or even maybe by extension in Africa. So there's nothing that says that that model cannot be replicated. Our refineries should be sold to the private sector. Let people who have the experience, the skill, and the know-how operate those things. And then you have the incidents of sabotage. There are people who they profit from making sure that the refineries don't work, because that way we can keep importing, and they keep making money at the expense of the Nigerian people. So we have to make sure that we do things properly, create the right structure for private sector investment. Government should just be there to ensure that everybody plays by the rule, but let the private sector drive the whole investment and the entire value chain from end to end.
Okay, now I'm not thinking of what will be running through the mind of an average Nigerian who will have to contend with these hikes. Like you said, if we are reasonable and we are not hurting ourselves, and purchasing power does not also improve, is there an issue of no pain, no gain?
Certainly, there has to be some level of sacrifices. I particularly empathize with small business owners. So a lot of large businesses and factories already use diesel to generate their own electricity. So this conversation about petrol does not affect them that much. But when you look at small businesses, they have to buy a small generator, they fuel it with petrol, and that's significant for them. Those are the people that government has to think about, how do we take care of them? And I know that some of the provisions in the Finance Act already has some level of palliatives for them, including exemption from company income tax, VAT. But government can also still do more. I think that would be, for me, a more meaningful conversation than trying to say we are going to buy buses for labor and all of that, which we have tried before and it never worked. And I also like the conversation around exempting, minimum wage, or poor people. If you earn anything like 30,000 naira or less in a month, or maybe even 50,000 naira or less in a month, you shouldn't have to pay any taxes at all. In many countries, even with that income, you should still be looking for welfare from the state, which is not available in Nigeria. So we need to find a way to protect the poorest and the vulnerable people in society and get the rest of us to pay commercial prices so we can drive up economic activities. The mindset that we have to keep prices artificially low because our people are poor is a wrong mindset. We should rather switch to a mindset that says we would promote prosperity for our people so that whatever the price may be, they'll have the ability to pay.
Now, let's now also take it on this way now, because many Nigerians still don't even understand the benefits of removal of subsidy. Now, would you say government is doing enough? I see jingles now everywhere from the NNPC, from agencies trying to educate Nigerians. Are they doing really well to make Nigerians understand that there will be light at the end of the tunnel?
No, I don't think government is doing enough. Certainly, government can do more. One is to, have very meaningful conversation with Nigerian people, including education and awareness. And we need to also speak to Nigerians in the languages that they understand. It's not everybody that understands the Queen's English we speak in cities. So some of us, Nigerians are people you connect with on radio. You need to speak their dialects. You need to go through their associations to create the sensitization for them to buy into it, because it's something that is in the interest of the entire country. I wouldn't, as a Nigerian, be proud for us to borrow and pay interest for the generation coming after us to be paying the loan back. That's clearly not the legacy we want to leave for our children. So government needs to do more enlightenment, more engagement, more education, and government, beyond all of this, has to demonstrate, because trust is something you have to earn. Nigerian government at all levels must be taking concrete steps to be able to earn the trust of Nigerians, so that, because people will say, well, when you save the money, you still steal it. Why should we not just waste it together and benefit a little bit? So that trust component is entirely within government circles to deal with, both at the federal and sub-national level.
I'm out of time, but I don't know if we can do this in 30 to 40 seconds. We need laws that will enable our oil and gas sector thrive. PIB is one of it, and we know what's been happening. I read sometime that the speaker is saying that this must be passed into law. That's talking about the present speaker now, Bajabi Amila. Now, what do you think, or what do you think will play out in all of this?
No, I think the PIB is one law that we should have passed like 15 to 20 years ago. But they say that, the best time to do it was yesterday. The next best time is today. We should do it like yesterday, but we should also not sacrifice diligence in the process. We have to do a thorough job that is fit for today and also fit for tomorrow to attract investment and to protect the interests of our country so that the natural resources we've been endowed with will no longer be a cost, but will be a blessing to our country.
West African tax leader, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Taiwo Yedele, it's always very good to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.